Well, thank you ever so much for joining us. Susie's going to introduce us now.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for our webinar this afternoon. So this is us. This is who's presenting your webinar this afternoon. So I'm Suzie Robinson. I'm a consultant with Clearbox Consulting, where I've worked for about 3 years now. And before that, I was an intranet and internal communications manager for a few different businesses. And at Clearbox, we help businesses with digital workplace needs, including strategy development and product selection. And Wedge is my co-host.
Hello there. Yes, I'm Wedge, and similar to Suzie, I'm now an intranet consultant, and in previous incarnations I've worked in regional and global organisations as their intranet manager. So while Clearbox only does intranets, that's empowered by our consultants who have hands-on experience. So today we're going to be talking about the many different intranet products out there, and it's fantastic that over 200 people registered for our webinar. That suggests that over 200 people are interested in intranets, and I count that as a win. But we want to remind you that we are an independent technology agnostic company, and we have reviewed, Suzie and team has reviewed over 20 intranet products, and you can download our reviews for free right now, even as you enjoy our webinar. So head to clearbox.co.uk/intranet-report.
Thank you, Wedge. And we published version 1.3 in July, and there is a cheeky update on its way soon as well. So you'll get an update if you download now to say that the new version is available as soon as it is. So we were lucky enough to have a large team of reviewers who helped us write the report in the first place. So in writing the report, reviewers had an in-depth product demonstrations and got their hands on the products as well as speaking with vendors to see what their roadmap looked like. So with each demo lasted about 3 to 4 hours, we've estimated that there's around 170 days worth of effort to make it a reality. And that doesn't include all of the admin behind the scenes that thankfully most of our reviewers didn't have to worry about. And we asked reviewers to contribute as we're all experienced in and around running intranets and digital workplaces. We also took feedback from actual customers as well. So we asked both contacts provided from the vendor and also did a call out on social media as well. So if you see some choice quotes incorporated into the report, you'll see that it's from real life people. And check out the customer sections as well to see a bit more. And actually we're starting our campaign for next year's report very shortly soon. So keep an eye out that on the social media. So why did we publish the report in the first place, and why are you here and looking at this webinar with us now? And this is a kind of a summary slide as to why. There are hundreds of solutions on the market, and this slide only shows the vendors that are included within our report, and there are many, many more that are out there. And it's still a confusing space, even though it has consolidated a little bit over the last few years, which we've seen in the previous reports we've published. It's still large and confusing. And this new report is designed to help you cut through some of that noise and to see what's really going on behind the scenes with some of these products. And on top of the list of products that are available, there is a huge number of changes that have happened. So this is just what's happened in the last 12 to 18 months. And these are the vendors that are in our report. So it doesn't show any of the vendors that are outside of it. So there's been quite a few changes just with the number. So Koyo now has been rebranded as Halo, and they're rebranded as Halo because they previously purchased JubiWee, which is an HR solution, and Smart, which is an employee apps product. So they've combined those, or they're in the process of combining that functionality into Halo to expand the functionality that's offered there. And that's a similar situation to Staffbase, which has had millions of pounds of investment over the past couple of years, which has allowed them to buy Banana Tag, which is a newsletter creation tool, and also Valo, which is a SharePoint intranet in a box product to expand their Office 365 functionality. And also fairly recently, they bought a company called Dirico, which is another kind of HR analytics tool, will help to kind of build out the functionality that they already have. Then AppSpace at the end of last year bought Beezy, and they're going through a rebrand and expanding out their functionality now to really bring those two products close together. And AppSpace is a huge product in the market, particularly around communicating through digital signage, and they have all sorts of other things. So they're really, again, consolidating features by joining together two different companies. Social Chorus last year bought Dynamic Signal and has now been rebranded as First Up. So has joined again together that functionality to create First Up as a single tool. And of course, last but not least, in the bottom right-hand side, you can see the Viva logos and designs. Microsoft is always throwing spanners into the works and introducing new features and functionality that the vendors will have to keep on top of, consider how they're going to complement or mimic and replicate what the functionality that Microsoft is doing. So this is just an example of why this space remains complicated, because a product you were looking at maybe last year when you were thinking about a new intranet project may have evolved an awful lot just in that short amount of time. That's a bit of scene setting as to who we are and why we're here. So let's look at the burning question that most people approach me with, which is which of the products that we've reviewed really is the best? So I will answer that with saying that every intranet is Schrodinger's intranet. All solutions are the best and worst intranet, no matter what fancy features they may show off or what badges they may have won from various different awards. In fact, shiny features aren't necessarily what you need. So take this amazing large box, for example. Emir is my cat, and he has more than enough room space to curl up and sleep in it, or to jump out at his brother and attack him. But he doesn't look particularly impressed. And in fact, he didn't stay in there very long and he jumped out shortly afterwards. And you'll have to find out which solution is best for you by opening the box, by which I mean you need to work out what your business and what your users need.
And this is the thing though, what do most of our clients already have? They already have SharePoint. But even though SharePoint can be amazing for apps and workflows and of course document management, cloud document management, that doesn't mean you have to use it as your intranet, does it, Suzie? Or is there a hybrid? There's a hybrid way of using SharePoint as well, isn't there, Suzie?
That's absolutely right. And there are a few different approaches that you can take for intranets. There are a few different cases for having a SharePoint solution, an independent intranet solution, which doesn't rely on SharePoint or in fact anything else in order to run, or in fact even building something yourself. And which option is the right solution for you will vary from business to business. So, for example, with SharePoint, as Wedge just said, you may already have it, but just because you have it, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily the right solution for you. Independent options might provide faster deployment or more flexibility around the designs, but things may take longer when you have complex needs. Then licensing might be too high for some organisations on an ongoing basis as well. So home built can provide more scope, but adds additional overheads for ongoing development work. So there really is an awful lot of things you need to think about, whether a SharePoint solution is the right one for you, or whether an independent one is, or whether you are big enough that actually building your own using something like Sitecore, for example, might be the best approach to take. I've gone through this very quickly, but if you have a look at our introduction, you can see the detail behind all of this and go through the arguments in a bit more information and think about what the right approach is to take. So then to find the right solution, as I say, you need to open the box and complete some research to find business employee needs. And this could be focus groups, a survey, or talking to stakeholders. And you could start discussions in Yammer as well, or something similar, to get those kind of informal conversations going. Then once you've got a sense of what business and your users need, you can document it in a strategy. So that shows how the right intranet can support business objectives. So in general, the business strategy tells you the priorities that your intranet should address, and the user needs help you understand how to deliver the solution. Both then feed into the requirements element. So from the strategy, you'll need to work out what matters most so that you know what areas need to be developed first, whether your existing intranet or as part of a new solution. So you may still want to stick with what you've got and just develop it a little bit more. Then you can start thinking about the functional and non-functional requirements that the intranet needs to include in order to deliver on the objectives that you've identified as part of the strategy in the second step. And then once you've got all of that, you can finally go shopping, or you can make changes to your intranet if you're not moving away from your current solution as well. So quite a few steps before you actually consider what is the right product for your needs.
Can we just emphasize the need for a unique and useful strategy? Because one of the things we help clients with is their requirements gathering, and therefore, we care about user needs and business needs. But we do often find that there's already a list of basic requirements. Probably the internal comms team, they have worked with IT, and so there'll be an Excel sheet of requirements, but these can be very basic These can be things like news publishing. And it's like, that is not going to help you choose an intranet product from the 80 on the market. So can I advise you to have a fantastic strategy that is useful and really will help you narrow down your choices. And from that strategy, you'll have granular requirements. Nothing as big as news publishing. That is a given. Of course you can have news publishing, but will you have scheduling? Will you have post on behalf of? So please be granular with your requirements, because I promise you all of these great products will definitely hit the basics.
Absolutely, thank you, Wedge. And we've created a guide that's available on our website, again for free, which is how to choose the right solution. And Wedge will share the link for that later on. If the chat's not working, it'll either go into Q&A or into the emails afterwards.
Indeed, I'm putting it in the chat now, but if you can't see the chat, we will email you the video with all links after the show.
Thank you. So, this is a few slides to make an important point that the best intranet is the one that best meets your needs. So you need to know what those needs are before you start looking at products, as it's very easy to get overwhelmed by features and functionality. So Loki here, we thought that he needed a box, like the one at the beginning with him and his brother was sitting in, but in fact he wanted a large paper bag that he could hide inside and attack his brother from, which he did shortly afterwards. I took this photo. So we're looking at the scenarios then, Wedge.
Yes, so we've been talking about requirements just now. Our view of understanding intranets is to consider their capabilities, the wider topic of capabilities. And in our report, if you download our free report, you'll see that Suzie and team have assessed every intranet product or platform against 9 or 10, these 9 or 10 business scenarios. So these are very real world, and therefore they will help you consider which intranet focuses on your priorities. And you're welcome to take a screenshot, but here are the scores. Suzie and team, Clearbox has reviewed all of these products down the left, including SharePoint itself on its own, but also SharePoint products that go atop SharePoint and transform it into a more capable intranet, as well as completely independent standalone intranets that don't even need SharePoint but can work with it. These scores, honestly, you should just download the report because you'll be able to see them. I think it's around page 30. So our first scenario is UX, user experience, and visual appeal. So our reviewers look at the overall quality of the UX for end users. They consider the interfaces and they consider what the user expectations are. Consistency is a big deal here. They also look at navigation and how admins and page builders can build and maintain navigation, considering the structuring of menus and visual cues. And we look at notifications and to-do lists and those sort of useful things that add value to your intranet. And there's an element of how good it looks as well. People have certain expectations for their intranet. Not only does it need to be on brand, but it needs to appear to be reasonably modern and not just like something from 10 years ago.
Absolutely. So here are a couple of examples for you. So the first one on the left-hand side there is Ecumena, which is an American product. This is a fairly traditional design, I would say, with a top mega menu. There's nice use of white space, there's simple branding and a good mix of web parts. Although this is also Ecumena. And this second example is different with a left-hand menu. There's a button like web parts and there's a block for news at the top. And this is a third example, again, from the same product. It's different. Where this customer didn't want a traditional top menu and instead wanted to encourage people to search for what they were looking for instead. There's a use of a lot of images, and there are also practical web parts like this profile completion rate that you can see on the right-hand side. Ecumena is also a good example of where additional time is needed to raise a score on the scenario. So you can see there's a little outline of the score on the bottom there. So you can see how we've scored things throughout to show where maybe you may need additional time or effort or potentially money in order to achieve some of these things from the basics. The other example on this page is from Thought Farmer, So this is a page template that's selected automatically that then populates the menu options on the left-hand side, depending on what it is someone is trying to set up. So in this example, a departmental page means that the department members are automatically displayed in the left-hand side. So this is a way of showing you that sometimes navigation can be generated automatically, taking some of the burden off of the Intranet Manager.
Great to see real products there doing so well in UX. If we move on to our next scenario of mobile and frontline support, considering people who may not be at their desk or may not ever open a laptop. So our reviewers consider how people get onto the platform, and that might include, a central database, but for some frontline workers, they may not be on a central database. And so it includes self-registration or alternative methods of identification. So that's very technical, but very important to people with mobile or frontline workforces. Of course, we think about the general UX of the mobile experience as well. This is about squeezing a whole intranet onto the mobile phone. So has the product adapted to the small screen? Is it the very same experience you experience on desktop, or has it been customized and adapted for a more mobile focused task? Such as in the third one here, we say, has it been dedicated to any frontline more mobile features? And what we're saying there is there may be shift swapping, or there may be task allocation, raising a ticket, which is much more practical and for the operational people in your organization. And then, of course, it's the admin tools as well. Are we sending news to everyone across the organization, or can we separate our audiences? How do we control the mobile experience considering that different audience?
That's right. And then again, I've got a few examples here, and they all make very good use of the smaller screen. So that's more than just being responsive. That's actually understanding how smaller screen experiences work and tailoring that experience and making use of a less screen space to use things like buttons, but also display information. And frontline workers are time poor, and so they don't necessarily want the breadth and depth of an intranet. So a lighter and leaner approach of an app is much more appropriate, which is why we've looked at that in particular in this scenario. And the best app approaches have recognised this, and they present that light and lean approach to their product. And this includes simplified menus, there's articles, there's easy ways to browse reference material, there's dedicated tools such as a chat to avoid shadow tech and reduce the sprawl of tools that they could be using. The example of a chat is on the far right hand side there from Halo again that I mentioned earlier on. Communifier, the third example on this page, they break their intranet up into spaces that are contained bits of information dedicated for particular teams or about particular topics. So HR news and announcements here is being shown. This is for the HR team, so actually dedicated for them as a community. Then Reach from Live Tiles is a dedicated app product that they offer amongst their platform of options of their different modules that they offer. And again, they've understood how to move from that larger desktop experience onto a smaller screen and actually dedicate a tool to an app. And likewise, Staffbase, that I mentioned again earlier on, that's had the huge amount of funding over the last couple of years. It started life as an employee app product. And so it really understands the frontline and all the functionality and needs that are there for that particular user group. And that's continued on through their product, and they continue to do that within their app as well.
So is there a definition or definite difference between an intranet that happens to be great on mobile and an employee mobile app?
I think there still is, although that difference is probably getting thinner and blurring as the intranet vendors understand more the needs of frontline. So at the moment, employee app products tend to address very specific needs or specific business needs, I should say, for organisations. So it may be that you want to address communications needs, or you do need more operational tools. And so they tend to few features that will meet those needs than overwhelming a user with lots of different things that they can potentially use from. Whereas intranet still tends to just offer everything, but in a smaller screen situation, which is where the ones that are on the screen now are slightly better in there if they've understood that need for admins to be able to really pare back what's being presented to that quite unique.
Lovely. So some organisations would do very well with an intranet that has very good mobile version, whereas perhaps some more operational or field organizations could do well with both an intranet and then a completely field-focused mobile app.
Yes, that's right. And in fact, we're researching mobile app products at the moment. So again, that's something else to look out for in the next coming few months, hopefully. A little sneak peek for you there.
Our next is close to our hearts, and I wonder how many internal comms people are on the line today. If we look at our internal communication scenario, this is broadly, we'd like you to consider these 4 things. It's about the creation of content and news, and that might mean reference pages, the permanent reference pages that help people get on with their work, as well as the news cycle that you have as well. So good layouts, easy to publish, multimedia options. Then there's the promotion, the idea of targeting people, getting news and the correct content in front of the appropriate people. But also, how do departmental publishers ensure their messages stand out? How do we cut through the noise, and how do we reduce the noise? And of course, scheduling, or sometimes you might call it air traffic control. How do you know when you should push out all your news? You don't want it all to be all HR every Monday. So how do you see what your news is going to be, and how do you control it as a pipeline?
Intranets have always been concerned about internal communicators, but I think this is a space that continues to be quite exciting, and we've seen some really things being developed over the last couple of years, and there's more in the pipeline as well to come soon. I think this is going to be an interesting space to keep an eye on, both for if you're looking to launch something new, or maybe just product is doing that maybe is a little bit behind the times when it comes to some of the other solutions that are on the market. So in terms of the examples I've got, so Interact is the first one here. They have a block building tool that's new, it's still being rolled out now. And it gives frequent and infrequent publishers a really nice publishing experiences. So publishers may start with a template, and they then drag and drop blocks of content onto the page. And this keeps the page publishing consistent for end users, but also means that infrequent publishers have a simple, but also quite a fun and engaging tool for building news stories. A bugbear of internal comms is the poor use of media across content, and Omnia in the left there simplifies the process by offering stream and YouTube from a multimedia menu. This allows people to drop in videos without needing to know any coding, and then images can then come from company repositories or from free sites like Pexels. Publishers can then edit the images by cropping and resizing either with an article or for a particular space on the internet in mind. So that's really unusual, and as I say, is a bugbear for many publishers trying to make sure that the news pieces are engaging and very nice as well. And the final example here is First Up. They have an orchestration tool to help reach the right people at the right time with a piece of communication. So first, the publisher builds an audience using predefined groups, previously saved audiences, or by creating a new one on the fly. They can then rely on the engine to publish and push the article to the audience based on their activities, plus the priority level of an article, where it's a critical message or just nice to know, for example. So publishers can then see who's being reached and how fatigued they are by how much number of other articles being pushed out to them at the same time. So this really does allow for that artificial intelligence that we've been concerned about for so many years, to see how it could work in a really nice way to help with scheduling and actually targeting individuals, not just groups of people, but individuals with the most important information they need to know at the right times for them, as well as for the piece of information that's being pushed out. Of course, this is still a little bit nerve-wracking to completely rely on AI and needs a little bit of information to build it up. So there's a hybrid approach, but also you can go the traditional route, just saying that you want something published now or published a little bit further down the line as well.
Wow, it's a brave new world, Suzie, with AI targeting. But some kind of targeting is definitely needed, isn't it? We can't simply be pushing the same news and content on the same homepages for 100% of people.
Absolutely. And news targeting and audience targeting tools are still few and far between. There are still a lot of tools that only rely on your kind of bog standard groups, but there are now some nice features which allow publishers to build up audiences on the fly. So you can figure out if a piece of news really is aimed for a particular audience and just target them with the information.
Bog standard groups doesn't sound terrible though, Susie, but you're saying there are more advanced options. If you've got that granular requirement, you can find a product that can do better than just the 10 groups that you might already have.
Absolutely. And it
Uh,
means then you don't have to maintain the group in whatever system it is. Maybe it's Active Directory or an HR tool. It means you can just rely on the intranet and just do it from within there without maybe having to rely on somebody else to update your group for you before you can publish.
Our next scenario is community and engagement. And this might be important to internal comms people, it might be important to HR people, but if you're in a large enough organisation, it might be absolutely vital to your community managers. And so we've considered 4 major areas of this: social collaboration or communities of practice, the more serious side of communities, but also blogs and discussion boards and ideation space where people can get real things done together. Of course, adding comments and reactions to already existing and published and new content. Yes, organizations are still debating how to respond to comments, how to moderate comments, and whether to turn them on or off. But if you have those granular requirements, you can find a product that can help you moderate. Gathering opinions, feedback and polls, and those sort of light engagements that can be fun, but also useful. And of course, if we think about well-being, we're talking about people-centric features such as onboarding, helping people get to grips with the intranet and your processes a day before they start and on the days they start, as well as mindfulness and health.
Right. So when you post an update on company strategy or announce that someone is retiring, you don't necessarily want people to like the article. So Unily and other products offers the option of reacting in different ways to content with customizable icons and names. So that replicates the experience on Facebook and LinkedIn and similar things. And is also sometimes tied into sentiment analytics as well. So you can really see how people are engaging emotionally with an article. And similarly, Communifier at the bottom left there offers gamification for activities completed across the intranet. So the type of badge, associated activities and points needed are all configurable. And this can be used to encourage initial adoption, such as by connecting with people across the site, or to encourage practical aspects such as profile completion, or to introduce new features like creating and completing tasks within a solution. And the final example here is from Powell, which has a nice ideation feature. And shown here is an entire page. Users can submit ideas and vote or comment on a colleague's suggestion. And then the progress of the idea is tracked and shared to the company as well.
And now on to information finding and KM knowledge management. And I think knowledge management is always important. I don't think it should be a mere corner of your organization. I think knowledge management is part and parcel of the intranet because of all the reference pages, because of all the how-to guidance. And so in this scenario, we are considering the capabilities and the user experience of searching across the intranet, across the enterprise, and refining the results so that you can find the content that you need. And that might mean indexing documents as well as your intranet pages. We're considering search management. A lot of search engines appear to be just set and forget, but that's not how they should be managed. So there should be easy access to a search admin panel where we can discover what is working well for people and improve results. And then we get into people finding, and not just by name. We want to think about how you find someone that you don't know. Imagine you're trying to find someone with a skill or someone within a department that you've heard of. And we might want to think about an attractive org chart, because doesn't every client want an org chart? And then we'll move on to the actual dedicated knowledge-based tools. So if you have a customer service department, they will probably have a very dedicated, slightly different section of the intranet or tool for their knowledge management. So we're thinking about topic tagging, we're thinking about larger policy libraries and those dedicated information spaces.
That's right. So I've got a couple of examples here. So Halo again on the left-hand side, they offer a clean and simpler search results page, which is a really nice starting point because sometimes search can be unattractive or really difficult to read. And there are icons here to highlight what types of content is returned in the end results. And then there are some detailed filters that help people work out what it is they actually want to get down to. So really go into the nitty-gritty of what they're looking for. And the search term is highlighted in the results as well when people go through to check whether they found what they're really looking at. And the search indexes a variety of sources, so that includes Microsoft applications if wanted, because Halo is an independent solution. And then users are presented with a document preview no matter where it's stored, so they don't have to download something to work out if they found the right thing. And that means that users can look up information without what they want without having to leave the search results page. So where the content is stored in Halo, publishers can even edit the content from within the search results. So that's shown now on this new screen. So they could say edit the title or change the document itself, so replace the document, and do that within the search results page, which I think is a really unusual feature and something that I really like when you can't remember where you've stored something, just searching for it and being able to replace it straight from there. The final example is from Invotra, who have worked with a lot of local and national government agencies. And they've taken that vast experience and created some really nice approaches to knowledge management. An example here is of a manual space, which includes a clear breakdown of section widgets for FAQs, multimedia options, and a clean presentation of information to make policy pages engaging. So they call policy pages manuals. I should specify that. Oops. If there was anything you wanted to add there, Wedge?
No, I was just thinking Invotra did my local council and I nearly wanted to turn up. Thought I could give them a hand because they're good people.
They are good people.
Our next category, our next scenario is admin experience and overall governance. So this is considering the structure of the site, general admin, including the user experience, how easy it is for you to manage everything, and also considering workflows, considering your content and site creation. And that gets into permissions and governance, whether you want everyone to be creating content, everyone to be creating new sites and new sections, or if you want to lock that down. We'll consider individual section structure management. So that might be that you can devolve or allow other departments to manage their own section entirely. And we'll consider templates that help them get on with their content. We'll also think about content quality monitoring, which is hard. So if it's one of your requirements, consider which product is going to help you do that, because not all products will offer you an aggregate sense of what's going on. So thinking about content promotion, expiry dates, unpublishing, the sort of things that need to happen every day, every week. And of course, for large organizations or multinationals of any size, considering multi-language needs. And that will be from the publisher perspective as well as the end reader.
That's right. So again, a few examples here. So admin screens can often be overlooked by publishers, and that makes the end user and admin experiences quite disjointed. But Power Manager within the Power Intranet is a nice example of SharePoint management presented simply, without much need for technical knowledge, and overall attractive looking screens as well. So businesses that need multi-language features on the right-hand side there, Omnia offers one of the best experiences we've seen. There's a dedicated permission group for translation authors who receive a notification when a piece of content needs to be translated, and they can then view the original and their translated version side by side. Then later they can see if any edits have been made to the original and then replicate that across to their translated version as well. End users can then read officially translated content presented to them based on their language preferences. So really flexible, really nice approach to multi-language needs there. And then finally, Unily shows a nice example of lifecycle management features. Often lists of content aren't presented as cleanly as this, which is showing a publisher the content that they own, along with the publishing status and review status of the content itself. And it's easy to scan this list and update content that needs to be reviewed without having to think too hard or to visit every page as well.
And on to analytics. And this should be really important to those of us who struggle to get aggregate analytics, who struggle to get an overview of what's happening across the intranet. I'm sure the HR site has great stats, but what does that mean for the whole intranet? How does that affect the homepage, etc.? So we'll be so in this scenario, our reviewers look at the reports and whether they're aggregate or whether they're granular only, and the display of those reports and whether you can make sense of them and how you would talk about those, the data points with your stakeholders. We talk about tracking and the possibility to get past to other systems. So that might be about exporting data to reuse in a different system. We consider search terms and how you can affect those search terms with best bets, and considering failure rates, you know, when somebody finds nothing. So failure to find and reporting. So with search, with content analytics, these things combine to give you a good overview of what's happening across your intranet, giving you pointers for what to improve and what you must fix.
Now, analytics is one of those scenarios that's performed less well for years, and we're really hoping that vendors will improve the baseline experience for admins. This has been happening very slowly, which is really great to see, but there is still work to be done in lots of places. So many of you out there will probably be nodding along saying that your analytics aren't that great. So in the meantime, there are some products that stand out from the crowd by delivering an excellent experience. So Staffbase and First Up are two examples where they show data in different formats, such as percentages, tables, and charts that can be delved into to discover more information, and allows admins or publishers to make decisions based on the information they're being presented with. What's also useful is that tools gather content into campaigns that allows publishers to see the performance of a group of content rather than just individually. So that's something that's really important for all of you internal communicators out there.
And moving on to Microsoft integration.
Oh, it's the digital workplace integrations first.
Oh, sorry there. So we've got two integrations. So we'll just talk about the general digital workplace integrations first. Thank you there. So this is about your line of business systems. So that might be Salesforce or Jira. And it's the idea of integrating those systems into the intranet so that your end users can access the data or the information or the GUI that they need. So we're particularly interested in full integrations where results from Salesforce or Jira are passed into the intranet for consumption. So this is about how users interact with notifications from all the systems. So we're looking for integrated notifications, and it might also include the everyday tools you use as well, such as Zoom, WebEx, and Slack. This might be about SharePoint, but it also is generally about Google storage, might even be Dropbox.
That's right. So we have one example here, which is Acuna again. So Acuna presents integrations in three different ways. The first one is a mission control. You can see in the top left, there's a little pink rocket icon, which is how people open up their mission control and find their links to the tools that matter to them. This is controlled by an admin, but you can see then the different categories of additional options that people can then use to populate their own mission control and launch out to the tools that really matter to them. A second option is a more detailed integration that creates the dashboard approach. Now, this dashboard is dynamic. So as you click on something in the top opportunities table in the top left there, the other tables and other charts change. So if you're looking at whether you have submitted any expenses for a particular opportunity, that table will change and show you the status of your expensive claim. So this is a much more integrated approach and shows how intranets can really support people in their day-to-day operational work rather than just thinking about news and communication. And then their third example here on the left-hand side again is an activity stream. Again, this is very detailed, in-depth integrations. On the right-hand side, you can see an activity filter that not only shows a range of products that can be integrated into Acuna, but also then how people can filter what's come through into the activity feed that's showing in the center there. And this shows all sorts of activities from all of those products. And it's a two-way integration. So if you wanted to reply to a Yammer post, for example, you could do that here, talk about Yammer now, which we'll talk about in a moment, but it could be something else. It could be Slack post, for example. So you could integrate Slack here. Or if it's a Jira ticket, or maybe if you submitted a ServiceNow ticket, you could see the responses and interact with that while someone is using the source system. So again, this is a really flexible approach to use for integrations.
So now onto Microsoft 365 integrations, and we've separated Microsoft from the other integrations scenario because Office 365 is just so ubiquitous. Even the best intranets will leave Office 365 to manage collaboration and maybe even comment management. So even if you don't want a SharePoint intranet and you go for a standalone intranet, you might still very successfully rely on Office 365 for document management, collaboration, and storage. So there's a variety of routes that vendors will use when they consider Microsoft 365 integration, and you'll have to consider your requirements for just how tightly you want that integration. Obviously, if you're using a SharePoint product, you can expect tighter integration. If you're using a standalone product, you'll want to consider what the vendor is offering you specifically.
That's right. And so for that reason, our examples are all from SharePoint Intranet and a Box solutions, because they all integrate that much tighter.
Suzie, do you just want to define the difference between a SharePoint intranet or an intranet for SharePoint and a completely standalone one?
Yeah, so a SharePoint intranet in a box product is a layer on top of SharePoint. It fills some of the cracks that Microsoft have left behind, or maybe complements some of the features and allows them to stand out maybe more fully, or maybe uses them in a slightly more unusual way than a standard Microsoft approach to some of those features. So Microsoft Viva is one of those examples. And then with an independent solution, it doesn't rely on anything in order to run. So you don't have to have SharePoint or Google, for example, in order to have a document library. It will actually live within the solution itself. So that's where the differentiations come between the two different products. And as Wedge has said, because the SharePoint Intranet in a Box products do rely on SharePoint, they are far more tightly integrated with Microsoft 365 solutions. So involved on the left-hand side there, they make use of SharePoint lists very, very well. So they will take the basic kind of list, almost like an Excel display in the background, and they will provide the styling on top. So you can have a location map, for example, events management, that sort of thing, that they will actually provide that overlay for, removing the need to develop that in-house and putting it into the hands of the vendor to add that layer on top and make something that's quite unattractive more attractive. We've included Fresh as an example here. They aren't one of the products that we've scored for the 2022 edition, but they do have some really nice solutions. So they don't have their own app at the moment, but they do use Microsoft Viva. They actually use the Microsoft Viva Connections app to display their content in a more in-depth way than other solutions are doing at the moment with Viva. So Viva then is expanded out to actually include intranet content, as well as its own automatically generated content from Microsoft. And then Fresh also helps with the integrations and a few other features within Viva that Microsoft don't offer yet. So there's a few things that they've added on top, which is that example of that additional layer. And then the final example is from Beezy, or AppSpace Intranet, powered by Beezy as it's known now, which shows their news, which is called Beezy Stories, and that's displayed within Microsoft Teams itself. So this is via the left-hand menu in Teams, which is a more common integration now, but this is still a nice example, and it works really well within the Teams presentation, as it feels like it's part of Teams rather than a bolt-on. So it allows those people who work in Teams to stay in Teams, yet still see the activities that are going on in the intranet. We do have a 10th scenario, which is the wildcard, which I'm going to skip over. There's some really nice features included in there. It's worthwhile going and have a look to see if you have something slightly more unusual. So highlights include live tiles that have an amazing people directory that we've really focused on in the wildcard for them. Interact have a really good digital signage solution, again, which they chose to highlight in their wildcard. And then Staffbase, of course, they chose their banana tag functionality that's now called Staffbase Email, and you can see how their newsletter tool stacks up in their wildcard there as well. So I'm going to jump on to the few things that we've noticed in all of that reviewing, all of those analysis of the different tools. There are 5 things that we've noticed that have been done particularly well. So as you'd expect, user experiences among them, but then also people being able to find things much more likely now than it was previously, because those people finding, resource finding, knowledge management tools have expanded a lot over the time, and mobile solutions, as well as we've already said, have improved a lot too. But then there are also areas that aren't done so well. So analytics, as I mentioned already, although integration options are good, they could be more extensive out of the box, as could Microsoft 365 integrations. And something that we found is that legacy features can often be forgotten. So like the admin screens, for example, they tend to be the last thing that vendors come back round to updating. And so there are some of those older features that if you kind of scratch beneath the surface of those shiny features that they will put in front of you, that maybe need a little bit work doing to them. And finally, so that I don't miss it off, accessibility features, they also need to be brought up to scratch, particularly with the need within government to have accessible tools presented to end users. That's something that's being done less consistently. And then that's it. Wedge.
Well, we're right on time, so we have got a few questions that I want to put to you, Suzie, from our friendly webinar registrants. While we're doing this, please do grab the report for yourself and see these screenshots and see our narrative assessments and our scoring in our free report at clearbox.co.uk/intranet-report. As Suzie said, we're on version 1.3 now, which is a very recent update, and 1.4 is coming out soon, and it's all free, and we'll email you and let you know. Here's a question for you, Suzie. Thinking about SharePoint. With SharePoint integration, does this create extra development costs to do with SharePoint on top of the costs of the intranet solution?
So usually no. If you are talking about adding in a SharePoint intranet in a box tool on top of SharePoint, then there is usually some sort of development cost, yes. But that is usually to make it work to your business need. So we tend to see that SharePoint intranet products are more of a starting point, and so require that kind of partnership experience either with a vendor or with an official partner to get it up to kind of scratch that you need as an individual organization, whereas independent solutions tend to be much more software as a service, to tend to come out of the box pretty much as you're going to use them. With both of those options, you can still have SharePoint as a document library in the background. And in some cases with the independent solutions, your end users don't even need a SharePoint license in order to view the content. If that's all it's doing is presenting it to you, then those end users don't even need that license, which makes them quite an appealing solution, particularly if you have a lot of frontline users.
Okay, I hope that satisfies you there, Adrian. When you said development, Suzie, is it actual development or is it configuration and back-end sortings out?
Usually it's configuration, but it can be as far as development as well. So there are some solutions that I've shown today. For example, Cumina is a good one actually, because it is so flexible. There are developments that you can do. So their search, for example, they tend to use the basic Microsoft search to power their search engine. But if you have a different enterprise search solution, you can work with them to configure and to develop the solutions to make your enterprise search work. So it really is kind of a sliding scale. And if you need those much more like a website development experience, so you are actually controlling everything, that is possible with some of these solutions.
Thank you there. And Jessica asks about the downsides of using SharePoint and a standalone intranet, considering, you know, if Microsoft are improving Office 365 all the time because it's in the cloud, are there any downsides for that mix? Oh, sorry, that's my dog.
Nope. So yes, so there are different cases for the different solutions. I've gone back to this slide just to kind of act as a prompt, and you can maybe take a little bit more time to look at it. So In some respects, the positives about using the SharePoint solutions, the case for it, is then also like the flip side as well, or the argument against having an independent solution. So the fact you already have SharePoint, you don't already have a solution in place for an independent, so you would need to set up a document management system solution. But the Microsoft development framework is certainly part of that. So where a product is working on top of SharePoint, they of course make use of the fact that Microsoft is iterating all the time and is always making changes to their timeline and to the product roadmap. But it also means that vendors have to keep up with that. So if a solution is coming out on Microsoft soon in SharePoint natively, they have to think, am I going to work with it? Am I going to complement it? Am I going to completely replace it? Or is there something else that needs to happen? So even though they're making use of all of that developmental work, they still have to work around it a little bit, whereas an independent solution doesn't need to worry about that. They can keep an eye on Microsoft and what the market's doing and possibly develop something that's similar maybe to Viva, but isn't called that, it's called something else. But they can keep an eye on it without having to feel like they're beholden on Microsoft to develop their own product, which also then means they can listen to their clients and they can hear what people are really looking for, what they really need, the pinch points, the complaints that they get through about something not quite working, that kind of development community, and really listen to that and then develop their product based on what people are actually asking for. I'm sure Microsoft do something similar as well, but this is a much more intimate relationship, I suppose, when you have an independent intranet solution, is that relationship. And so actually the relationship you have with the vendor is something that we've not covered here, is sort of a non-functional requirement, but is actually very important and is something you need to think about and consider when you're investigating a solution as to whether you could work with the vendor for a certain number of years and whether their approach to development, whether it be with Microsoft or independently, is meeting what you feel your business would need. Oh, Wedge, I think you're on mute.
I am. We've had a couple of questions about the tech stack of our standalone intranets that we've reviewed. And our report kind of lists some of the requirements like Azure or whatever that the standalone tech stack might need. But a lot of these intranets can deploy from the cloud, can't they? So does that simplify the IT headaches?
It does, and actually that's the second to last on the independent solution box there in the middle. So we heard during COVID, right at the start, that some of the independent intranet solutions could deploy within a matter of days in some cases to get a really basic structure in place. Because they are in the cloud, they are literally just a few kind of hookups and then switching it on. In an ideal world, of course, we know how technology projects can go, and of course there's often the odd hiccup, but that's the theory in any case. Whereas something that is on top of SharePoint, there are a lot more things to set up. There's a lot more things to hook up and connect. And likewise, if something is client hosted, there's that element as well of things needing to be set up.
So even if SharePoint Online, it's online, it's in the cloud, and your SharePoint solution is online in the cloud, they still have to be given permission to talk to each other. They still have to be deployed and integrated. That's
right, because SharePoint is fairly complex in the back end, the way that it runs off of the different collections of sites. At the very least, those need to be connected. So if you already have a SharePoint solution and you want to put something on top of it, then those things need to be correctly lined up and set up correctly for both the product that's going on top as well as for what you want at the end. So there's that degree of difficulty that comes with SharePoint kind of by itself.
But there's the other benefit though. If you already have a reasonably simple SharePoint Online intranet now, 2,000 pages, 20 sites, can you deploy an intranet solution on top of it, or do you have to migrate? Do you have to start again, or can you just use what you've already structured?
I think, off the top of my head, I think it's a mixture of the two. So I think
the vendor.
Yeah, I think it varies from vendor to vendor. A lot of them like it if you already have content that's set up. So if you're moving from an older version of SharePoint into SharePoint Online, then that is a migration.
It's a fantastic opportunity to get things right this time.
exactly, and tidy up and to get rid of half of your documents if you realize that they're out of date, that sort of thing. But if it's a brand, if you're already in SharePoint Online and you're just moving across or adding in this product, I think they can use what you've already got set up, just with tweaking it and making sure it works with styling and that sort of thing as well.
Alrighty, well, everyone's stuck with us, Suzie, so we're up to time now, but we should thank everyone for sticking with us for the Q&A. Thank you, Inga. Lots of people talking about your cat, Suzie. Sorry about my dog, he wanted to join in as well.
That's all right. We're animal friendly at Clearbox, so it's all good.
So we'll send you some links. We'll send you this video tomorrow, and you'll be on our mailing list for that. So watch out for an email from Clearbox Consulting.
Thank you very much, everybody. It's lovely to see you all.